In Lawrence and Nancy Goldstone's book, Out of the Flames, a breathless romp through 16th century Europe, they recount the explosion of the first information age in the West. Oh, I need my copy of it. From Gutenberg's movable type to the invention of a handheld book, an octavo that could easily fit in a saddlebag. They wrote, "History is an ocean that books help us navigate. It is the permanence of the printed word that has allowed ideas to travel from place to place, from age to age. The power of unleashed expression is not new to the electronic age." So why did the Protestant Reformation happen close on the heels of widespread printing? Well, because for the first time in church, capital C, church history, people beyond theologians and priests were able to access the Bible, to read it for themselves. Now, to be sure, it was not books for everyone, everywhere, all at once. Only the educated and the elite were able to read, but with more books available and with a rise of the merchant class, Renaissance humanism, and the publication of classical texts, the demand for education increased. The Goldstones recount the history of Spanish theologian and physician Michael Servetus, whom we claim as a Unitarian martyr. Servetus was one of the first to write and publish a book that stated that the Trinity, Father, Son, Holy Spirit, as recounted at the Council of Nicaea, was not scriptural. He read the ancient Greek and ancient Hebrew, and he said, it's not here. Now, if we believe the Goldstones, Servetus was something of a jerk who kind of liked to poke the power structure. And John Calvin, who was a theologian and reformer and a guy who could never be wrong, used all of his power and his wiles to squash this heresy. Now, heretic means free thinker, by the way. I see you, heretics. Servetus was burned at the stake in Geneva, October 27th of 1553, a mere 472 years ago this month. And all the copies of his book that they could find were included in the fire. They strapped them to him. They roped the books onto him. Why? Why? Because Calvin and the authorities did not want Servetus's heretical ideas and dangerous ideas to infect other people, lest he put their souls in danger. Turns out that Calvin kept one of the books for himself. Maybe his soul wasn't so much in danger. Guess he was not at risk. So the book recounts, this book recounts how a few copies were later found and their journey through private and public libraries in Europe. 3 remaining copies of Servetus's book, Christianissimi Restitutio, the Reformation, the restitution of Christianity, remain in the National Library in Austria, in Vienna, in the Bibliothèque Nationale in Paris, and at the Library of the University of Edinburgh. So why did first the Inquisition and then Calvin care so much? It wasn't as though Servetus was going to be a bestseller. I mean, he was a lousy candidate for a PR tour. But in that turbulent era of reforming the capital C church, in the era of reforming the church, it was a protest. You get it? Protestant Reformation. Oh, that was a revelation for me too when I got it. Oh, it's a protest, right? Those in power of the Protestant Reformation, Calvin among them, fought dirty for control of the narrative. We are reforming this way and not your way, and your way is dangerous and it's got to be stopped. That's how powerful books are. Now, you know this. You know how powerful books are because they change our lives. They change our thinking. They cause us to see the world and behave in new ways. We asked you to think about books that transformed your life, and some of you have brought some today. To think about books that have been most impactful to you. And I say, if you brought your books, don't forget to take them home. We're going to try something. Ben is going to bring the microphone out to you, and we'd love for you to share the name and author of a book that has been transformative to you. Just the title and the author. And after the service, you can chat each other up about the books that you love. Online folks, if you'll share a book title and author in the chat, we're going to try to share those here in the room. And we've just got a few minutes for this, so I see some hands up, and I'll call you back when we're together. Deb, and I saw Stephanie and Carol. Come on.
All right, I'll start. So we have Storytelling with Data by Cole Nussbaum.
Quiet by Susan Cain.
Okay, I'll come to the middle.
Remove One's Own by Virginia Woolf.
Being Mortal by Atul Gawande.
Two of mine are ones you've given me. One is Awe, and the other is the pocket version of the Constitution.
A New Earth by Eckhart Tolle.
The 1619 Project, created by Nicole Hannah-Jones.
The Handmaid's Tale, Margaret Atwood.
Winnie the Pooh by A.A. Milne.
Right there, Carol is right by you. Oh, sorry. I'm trying to get you, Carol.
Peace is Every Step by Thich Nhat Hanh.
Structure of Scientific Revolutions by Thomas Kuhn.
Finding Your Vocation by Parker Palmer.
Oh, yes.
Frog and Toad Books by Arnold Lobel.
Nice.
The Road Less Traveled by Scott Peck, I think.
Yeah.
Things Fall Apart, Chinua Achebe.
Rules for Radicals by Saul Alinsky.
The Power of Myth by Joseph Campbell.
The Politics of Love by Marianne Williamson.
Watership Down by Richard Adams.
Neither Wolf Nor Dog by Kent Nerburn.
The Zen of Oz by Joey Green.
Pass it down, pass it down.
The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe by C.S. Lewis.
Sirius Blooms at Night by Shani Mutu.
Devotions, Mary Oliver.
The Joy Luck Club by Amy Tan.
Oh, yeah.
A Spectre Haunting by China Mayville.
The Body Is Not an Apology by Sonia Renee Taylor.
Oh, yes.
Lord of the Rings by Tolkien.
The Life of Henrietta Lacks.
Oh, yes. One up here. A few more.
Driftless by David Rhodes.
It's Okay That You're Not Okay by Morgan Devine.
Yes.
Charlotte's Web by E.B. White.
My second one, sorry. James by, what was his name? Percival Everett.
The Back of the Turtle by Thomas King. The Girl Who Drank the Moon by Kelli Barnhill.
Online, we have added a Sand County Almanac by Aldo Leopold, Pearl Buck, The Good Earth Trilogy, Revelations, Diaries of Women, edited by Moffat and Painter, Peace in Every Step, again, Thich Nhat Hanh, The Secret Life of Trees by Peter Wolleben, Uncle Tom's Cabin by Harriet Beecher Stowe, and The Snow Leopard by Peter Matheson.
What's wrong with you people? You get too much joy out of reading. You get so much joy out of reading, out of expanding your minds from the youngest to the oldest in our congregation. You're just out of control with reading. You got to be stopped. Actually, you did really good. You did really good. Just author and title. Very, very well done. But really, somebody's going to want to put a stop to that. In his highly accessible book, How Fascism Works, The Politics of Us Versus Them, Jason Stanley, who's a scholar of authoritarianism, who left his post at Yale because of fears of reprisals and moved to the University of Toronto in Canada, he says this: fascist politics seeks to undermine public discourse by attacking and devaluing education, expertise, and language. Intelligent debate is impossible without an education, without access to different perspectives, a respect for expertise when your own knowledge gives out, and a rich enough language to describe reality. All of these stories, all of these titles that you said, I could just hear the richness of the language to describe reality, whether it's fiction or nonfiction or poetry or theater. These just give us language to describe reality. He continues, when education, expertise, and linguistic distinctions are undermined, there remains only power and tribal identity, close quote. We're rightfully concerned about the thought police, about the arbiters of orthodoxy. Stanley continues, fascist politics makes room for the study of myths as fact. In fascist ideology, the function of the education system is to glorify the mythic past, elevating the achievements of members of the nation and obscuring the perspectives and histories of those who do not belong. Close quote. So people like you, people with eyes and minds wide open, yours, ours, we need to be controlled. Who's filling our heads with education and expertise and language, stories of diversity and new adventures, stories with portable magic, books Stephen King said are uniquely portable magic. Who's filling our heads with this? Well, it's the librarians, people. It's school librarians, and they must be stopped. It seems ridiculous because it's ridiculous, and yet, led by those arbiters of orthodoxy, the Moms for Liberty, and with a list of 850 books compiled by then Texas Representative Matt Krause, school librarians were put on notice. Remove these books or lose your jobs. This was in 2021. That list grew to 4,200 unique titles by school year 23-24. This is the poster of a new documentary. Librarians were accused of being pornographers and pedophiles because their collections included books that spoke from an LGBTQIA perspective. They were accused of emotional terrorism because they offered books by writers of color that might make white children feel bad. This new documentary, The Librarians, challenges us to see the trauma that these public servants went through, continue to go through, as they try to protect the civil rights of our children to read and explore new worlds. After a constable in one town wanted to have a list of the names of people who checked out certain books, children wanted the names of children who checked out certain books. Ugh, that just gives me the willies. One librarian said, they're coming after the kids who come into the library to find safe space. Writer Angie Thomas, author of young adult novels The Hate You Give and On the Come Up, among others, said this: book bans are disheartening for many reasons, but the most heartbreaking for me is the message that it sends to young people who see themselves in these stories. Young people whose realities should make us uncomfortable enough to spark change, not silence the voices that speak to them. And yet, as disheartening as it is, I will continue to write books that serve as mirrors and sliding doors and windows, even when the mirrors reflect uncomfortable truths. Close quote. And of course, we have our own book bans in Iowa, led by Moms for Liberty, many of whose children don't even go to public schools. The Des Moines Register series, Iowa's Book Ban Battle Project, does a really good job of laying out the timeline, the legal challenges, and the successes, and the work still ahead. We have wonderful librarians in Ames, the public library, and in our schools, both our public schools here and at the university. And not coincidentally, right here in this fellowship, we have a lovely library, the Dustin Berger Library, that the Bergers made possible for us, that is curated by an excellent team. It's a great collection. And on the fourth Sunday of each month, they do book talk. So you can show up after service and just talk about the books that you're reading. It's wonderful. It's just a wonderful way that we value books here in the congregation. By the way, this documentary, The Librarians, is out now. I saw it in Des Moines last week, and it will be in not too long a time. It'll be on PBS, I believe, and BBC America. If you stream those, you'll probably be able to get access to it. Lee, you mentioned the 1619 project. You know, journalist Anderson Cooper recently said there are many forms of patriotism, and telling the truth is one of them. That's good, isn't it? Yeah. In her transformative work, the 1619 Project, Iowa native Nikole Hannah-Jones shifted the narrative of the African American experience in the United States. Out of meticulous research and reportage, she crafted a new creation story of our country, starting with the arrival of enslaved Africans on the shores of the so-called New World, and continuing into the economics and culture of the present day. If fascism must tell the story of the mythic and glorious past, the 1619 Project is a direct hit right into the center of that falsehood, of that mythology. No wonder it needed to be banned. In a Banned Books Week event from 2024, 2025 was just a couple of weeks ago, I think, was Banned Books Week. This was 2024. Ms. Jones, along with attorney and activist Brian Stevenson, are in a conversation with Chris Jackson of One World, which is an imprint of Random House. Here, Ms. Jones discusses the backlash to her work and narrative control.
Being a tremendous backlash. And that backlash begins with a backlash against narrative. And then they use that backlash against narrative to change policies and to change laws and to justify the changing of policies and the changing of laws. So we really are in a narrative war. And the reason our books have been banned and our books have been challenged is they understand as well as we do that it's narrative more than anything else that drives policy. That it's not the data, it's not the facts, it's not humanity, it's not what the peer-reviewed research says is the best thing to do. It is narrative. It is how are we taught to think about these things? How are we taught to think of people as human or not, as deserving of punishment or not, as pathological or not? So I think we all understand how critical narrative is, and what the last 5 years has shown us is that the work, not just mine, but this really, you know, I mean, you epitomize that, Chris, right? The authors that you publish really epitomizes how we have had, for the first time, such a large number of us who collectively have some levers of control on that narrative. And this pushback is a result of that. If they weren't reading 1619 Project, if they weren't reading Stamped, if they weren't reading Between the World and Me, if they weren't reading Just Mercy and being transformed and challenged, there would be no need to ban these books. There would be no pushback. The pushback reflects the role. It reflects the power of this work and the transformative nature of it. But unfortunately, it's often felt. I think about this quote from Dr. King.
Likewise, Mr. Stevenson, the author of Just Mercy and the director of the Equal Justice Initiative, was talking about how storytelling helps shape narrative. Mr. Jackson asks him how he can do the heavy work he does, which is trying to keep people or get people off of death row. How does he do this work with such a generous invitation to transformation? And he talks about the power of story.
You know, what helped me was being sort of an advocate, continuing to be an advocate for people who are poor and vulnerable, people who are condemned. You know, as a lawyer living in Alabama, going into courts that are really hostile to the people I represent, hostile to a lot of the things that I think are important, you know, I didn't have the option to just talk for myself in that space. I had to persuade, I had to find a way to get, because otherwise my clients would literally be killed and the people I was trying to help would be continually oppressed. And so thinking about, and I think it's exactly what Nicole said, it's that stories allow everyone a chance to participate. You can get involved, and that's, I think, the power of narrative. We've seen a lot of movement on a lot of issues in this country over the last 50 years. I think about what Mothers Against Drunk Driving did in the 1970s and 80s, when they began elevating human stories in response to the crisis of people driving while intoxicated. And legislators were not paying any attention to that. We did not have very strong responses to people who would get in a car intoxicated and do harm to other people.
So it cuts off a little too soon, but of course that story about Mothers Against Drunk Driving, they began to come together and tell their stories and elevate a need for change that had not been elevated, and we're able to really make a change. We're all aware of that now, and it made a change across the country. The point is that we can change the narrative, and storytelling works. I think Stevenson echoes the words of Toni Morrison here. She said, "This is precisely the time for artists to go to work. There's no time for despair, no place for fear. We speak, we write, we do language, and I will add, we paint and we photograph and we weave and we knit and collage and dance and make music and tell stories." She says, "This is how civilization heals." Ben read the quote from Cole Arthur Riley's luminous book, This Here Flesh, Spirituality, Liberation, and the Stories That Make Us. How will we make space to hold the memory of the collective? There are times when belonging is not cemented in the lived experience, but in the lively or somber retelling of the moment afterward. which means that we can transfer belonging to the next generation by welcoming them into the memories that we or they have not lived but choose to steward. In many spaces, to foster collective memory well, we must habitually ask ourselves, whose story gets told? Whose story is believed? And who gets to tell it? Not that you lot need convincing, but we must continue to read, and more than that, to preserve, protect, and defend the right to read all kinds of material. The joy that we experience from reading, and the pathos, and the confusion and frustration and mind-opening magic of other ideas and other worlds, these are essential ingredients of our participation in a democratic society, of our capacity for meaning-making and justice-making, and how we cultivate compassion for all of life, because liberation lies that way. Keep reading, heretics. Fear not the narrative. We got stories. Blessed be, and amen.